everyone, welcome to Collapse Astrology. My name is Hummingbird, and in today's video we're covering not only Jupiter in Cancer, but the extremely potent, empowering cardinal square between Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Aries. This square represents both the completion of a journey these two planets have been on since last August, and also a major moment of initiation. If you use these energies effectively, you will kick off something new in your life. It is pretty much guaranteed. And if you felt something building, maybe since the beginning of the year, maybe since this series of squares started all the way back last summer, this is very likely the time that it will come to fruition. Now, this is going to be different for everyone, and if you want advice more specific to your natal chart, you should check out the rising sign horoscopes that are now posted on my new channel, Horoscopes by Hummingbird, where I'm going to be sharing monthly new moon horoscopes as well as specialty horoscopes for bigger deal transits like these. Some of you might have seen the horoscopes I posted for Saturn in Aries on this channel, and currently those are still up. I will probably eventually migrate them to the other channel. I didn't really like the way posting all of those affected like the flow of this channel, and I kind of think it hurt me in the algorithm, so I decided to make a separate horoscope channel and just try to offer consistent rising sign content over there. Here I will keep focusing on the more collective stuff. I am also realizing that when it comes to collapse stuff, the politics and world events that I really created this channel to cover from a mundane astrological perspective, those insights usually come in really close to the exact day of a transit, as I'm seeing how things are manifesting and what is happening in the collective right as the energy is shifting. So I'm not here to make predictions as much as I am to offer analysis of what's actually taking place, and I'm realizing that I can't do those videos very far in advance. But when it comes to how transits are likely to affect us on the personal level, that part I can discuss ahead of time. And of course, that is super important for supporting everybody in proactively working with the astrology in your own lives. So I may or may not have a separate video about this square coming out closer to June 15th, which is when it's exact. But here, I want to break down the timelines and energies we're working with in a way that's going to help you to grab the reins of this big cosmic turning point. Quick side note, there is a lot of political stuff to talk about, scary stuff, hopeful stuff, and some hilarious and ridiculous stuff, and I plan to cover it all on my first live stream this Sunday evening. So be sure to tune in for that. I'll say a little bit more about that at the end of the video. So, like I said, this transit is a big deal. A big shift is happening right now away from mutable signs, which are energies that are constantly in motion and which don't always afford us a lot of agency. Mutable signs are kind of like a rushing river or a hurricane. But Saturn, Neptune, and now Jupiter are entering into cardinal signs, which are initiatory and much more empowered, much more autonomous. So this is an opportunity to stand up in the rushing river and make a more conscious, intentional choice about where you're trying to go instead of just being swept away. I do want to stress, though, before I get into the specifics, that this is not an energetic where positive changes will just happen with no effort on your part. Especially wherever you have Aries in your chart, where Saturn just entered, you will have to grind. You will have to really work hard on something, show up with diligence and discipline and devotion and all the other fun things that Saturn asks of us. And a square also means that there will be tension, maybe two parts of your lives that feel like they're pulling in different directions. But I want to invoke the image of a lever for grasping this energy. Tension is essential. Effort or input force is essential to make the simple machine of a lever work. Without it, you just have a beam and the thing you're trying to lift sitting on the ground. But a lever is magical, at least as far as machine science goes, because you can lift something much heavier using one than you could ever lift with your bare hands. And that's what we're working with in this square. Put in the effort in Aries while you ride the natural expansion of Jupiter in Cancer, and you'll turn a major corner somewhere in your life. It might not change everything all at once, but if you embrace the timing of the transit and the grind required by Saturn, you'll end up somewhere very different by the end of the month. Before we get deeper into the archetypes, let's do the recap, because this time frame will help you clue into how the Jupiter-Saturn square has already been impacting your life. Jupiter and Saturn already squared each other twice. The first square was on August 19th of 2024, and the second one was on December 24th. A lot of longer-term transits have 3 peaks because of planetary retrogrades, and the peaks tend to follow a trajectory similar to the hero's journey, or at least a simplified version of it. The first peak will be an initiation, a call to action or adventure. Then the second peak will be what's called the ordeal, or the climax, or the confrontation of the journey, where the hero descends into the cave to fight the dragon. And then finally, the third peak will be the resolution, the integration, the hero returning home with new wisdom, experience, and maybe even a gift to share. In this set of squares, the first 2 peaks took place with Saturn in Pisces and Jupiter in Gemini. So these are the mutables that I was mentioning, and especially with Pisces being a water sign and Gemini being an air sign, these are really, really hurricane or rushing river vibes. They're very difficult to control or manage, very difficult to assert autonomy in. The first square was happening right after the Democratic National Convention, when Biden had finally dropped out and Kamala Harris's campaign was taking off. People were thinking they felt that rising tide, but it was all mutables. It kept changing, and obviously the election turned out the way it did. And then by the end of the year, when the second square happened, Trump was starting to announce his cabinet picks. The fake country was bombing Syria and Lebanon. The massive fires in LA started less than a week after the square's peak. So there was a lot of energy and motion. And if you reflect back on your own life during those time frames, maybe you can see some changes that you really needed to make. Maybe you were becoming aware of some unhealthy habits or behaviors. Maybe you were starting to sense a new path calling you. But it wasn't quite time to step onto it yet. Maybe you even had some kind of major confrontation or ordeal at the end of the year that maps to the second peak and the fighting the dragon energy of the hero's journey. And so it's a big deal that this is the third of the 3 peaks, but it's an even bigger deal that the final square is with both planets in cardinal signs. It's a chance to finally tie off the thread of the first 2 squares, to finally put your foot down somewhere in your own life in a way you may not have been able to last year. Just because, there's no skipping steps in the hero's journey. You have to go through the ordeal before you can return home. But it's also a chance to start something. So think of this entire month as both an ending and a beginning. The end of an adventure that started last August, but the beginning of something that will keep playing out for much longer, at least until the opposition between Jupiter and Saturn, which is in 2029. And you could even think back to the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at the very end of 2020. That was at 0 degrees of Aquarius, for an even longer time frame to work with. Now let's get into the archetypes a little bit. Saturn in Aries I have covered pretty extensively, so here let's explore Jupiter and Cancer a little more. Here are some keywords for each one. For Cancer, we're working with mothers, children, the womb, the breast, nourishment, safety, food, mana, garden, cooking, flavor, empathy, care, home, basic needs, shelter, warmth, protection, generosity, deep emotion, deep water, the crab, mood swings, and dependency of all types. For Jupiter, you can think about expansion, benevolence, protection. It's mycelial nature. Jupiter brings opportunity, there's space, widening, centrifugal force, which I'll explain a little more later, magnifying glass, an amplifier, a microphone, healing, generosity, opening, looseness, and releasing the grip. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, so they are archetypes that click, that feel at home together. And you can see that there's some overlap, especially with themes of protection, safety, and generosity. I think there can also be some overlap with their shadows, which both swing towards too much overgiving, overwhelm, not knowing when to stop, not knowing when to set boundaries. And one of my favorite ways to understand the relationship between Jupiter and Saturn, and I think this is really crucial for working with the square, is to think of a potter's wheel. Jupiter is the expansive force, you could call it centrifugal force, that's basically there automatically once a wheel is spinning. If you just put clay on the wheel and turn it on, obviously the clay is going to quickly go all over the room, it's going to create a mess, and you're not going to be able to create anything useful with it. Meanwhile, Saturn sort of aligns with what's called centripetal force. That's the force that essentially keeps planets in orbit. It keeps an object rotating around a center point instead of flying off into space. Now, if I have any Newtonian mechanics nerds on here, you know these analogies with centripetal and centrifugal force aren't really perfect. I'm forcing the comparison a little bit, but I think on a basic level, it can be really helpful to understand how Saturn and Jupiter operate together. And taking it back to the potter's wheel, Saturn is the potter's hands. So while the Jupiterian expansion is essential, we also can't create anything intentional without what Saturn brings, which is structure, boundary, form, diligence, and ideally mastery, skill sets and capacities developed over a long period of time. So it's really this combination of expansion and contraction, opening and closing, flow and structure that allows us to make something useful, a bowl or a vase or whatever else, something we want to add to our lives. So Aries in your natal chart is where you will need to apply that Saturnian discipline. That's the area of life where you've got to watch out that the clay doesn't just fly all over the room. That's going to be somewhere where things could get really messy if you try to cut corners or bypass something challenging that really needs to be tackled. But Cancer in your natal chart is where the key will be to let the field open, flow, expand, release. It's probably going to be somewhere in life that surrender is required. So let's talk a little bit about this overlap in themes of safety and protection that are associated with both Jupiter and Cancer. Of course, in the potter's wheel analogy, that expansive force might not seem very protective, and Jupiter does sometimes have the effect of exposing something, almost like pulling the roof or the lid or the membrane back as expansion happens, and that can create a sense of vulnerability, visibility that wasn't there previously. And so especially if the Cancer area of your chart has been neglected, if you haven't been paying much attention, Jupiter might reveal something you weren't seeing before in a way that could leave you feeling overexposed, especially since Cancer is a pretty private sign. It doesn't reveal its innermost secrets very easily. But there's also a protective quality that comes along with that reveal, because we can't take care of or care for something we're not aware of. Jupiter's widening of our lens helps us to find fuller acceptance of what is and allows us to handle it more effectively and more realistically. Sometimes astrologers will associate Jupiter's protective nature with the idea that Jupiter, the planet, because of its enormous mass, protects Earth from getting hit by comets and asteroids because its gravity field deflects them. From what I've seen, the science on that is actually kind of dubious, but it definitely is another helpful angle from which to understand Jupiter. In the natal chart, Jupiter tends to be a place where we have some luck, where things come naturally to us, where opportunities open up, and especially if it isn't challenged by an aspect to Saturn or to Chiron, it will be somewhere in your life where it feels like the universe has blessed you. It can feel like Jupiter shields you from the roughest challenges in that area of your life. So in Cancer, these themes of protection, care, and generosity will really be emphasized. And probably you'll be asked to both give and receive care and generosity. You might find your sense of empathy expanding, more attunement with your heart and your emotions, more innate desire to protect the vulnerable. And especially with Saturn in Aries as part of the picture, you might feel the call to become more self-sustainable in ways that will protect you and your most intimate people, like growing a garden, studying first aid, deepening into healthy, secure attachment bonds, possibly homeschooling, helping young ones cultivate empathy, this kind of thing. Now, of course, Jupiter and Cancer both have shadows. And I think there will be more of a deep dive on the shadows when I make the video reflecting the politics and current event parts of this transit, because Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and the United States natal chart all provide very interesting manifestations of Cancer's shadow, and actually Jupiter's as well. But I will mention a few of the personal shadows here quickly so that you can be on the lookout. With Jupiter, overwhelm is one of the biggest ones. And especially in a water sign, there can be a feeling of just getting knocked over by a big wave, or a feeling of emotional flooding, or being in over your head. So that's why surrender is really key. You can't really control Jupiter. You just have to let the expansion happen and, try to swim, try to stay afloat. With Cancer, there are shadows of mood swings, of overgiving, of codependency, of emotional manipulation, jealousy, less than conscious psychological dynamics coming into play. I always tell Cancers that they've got to learn to retreat into their crab shells intentionally, to give themselves space and time alone to refill their own cup and recharge in their own energy field in order to be resourced enough to give the true emotional and physical care and nourishment to others that Cancer is so gratified by. If you don't create intentional time alone, then that shell will come down without you having any control over it. And that's why Cancer can have a reputation for moodiness, like sometimes being wide open and full of love, and then other times being withdrawn and gloomy. It's better to be proactive about tucking yourself away before you completely run out of spoons and your energy field pulls all the way in unexpectedly. So we all may need to work with those themes of energetic and emotional management, learning to prioritize filling our own cups before giving everything to others. I want to finish with a quote from my 2025 forecast, where I talked about this transit and what a major turning point it would be in the year. Here's what I wrote. Squares guarantee some tension. So don't expect these energies to be peaceful or times when everything feels like it's flowing naturally together. The vibes are more like using all your strength at the wheel of a great ship, putting in the hard work to stay on course through waves higher than your vessel, and ultimately succeeding. Give your all, and you'll have the strength to see the journey through. If Saturn in Aries is the lone figure at the helm of the ship, masculine and ferocious with muscles glistening in the storm, Jupiter in Cancer is the ocean herself, an abundance of water that makes its own rules and defines its own reality. The individual is a speck within its vastness. This energy is not malicious, rather it's awesome in the spiritual sense of the word. The worthy sailor is one who approaches the ocean with respect, aware that she can bring him to his knees. Jupiter in Cancer will bring in a rush of emotion, connection, and intuition. Our job will be to let it guide us while also holding down the fort with devotion to our Saturnian work. Okay, so I hope that gives you all something to work with on the personal level as we move into this square. Again, please check out my new channel, Horoscopes by Hummingbird. Please subscribe there so I can start to build it up, and I hope you enjoy the rising sign horoscopes that are posted there. My plan is to post new moon horoscopes there each month, plus horoscopes for longer term transits like Jupiter in Cancer. The Cancer new moon is on June 25th, and it's conjunct Jupiter, so I'm not going to make separate new moon horoscopes this month. You can think of these Jupiter and Cancer horoscopes as relating to the whole month of June. And then next month, I intend to have horoscopes for Uranus entering Gemini, as well as the Leo new moon at the end of the month. Here on this channel, there are also a few updates. I now have a membership option set up called the Constellation. And at this point, the Constellation is just for folks who want to support the channel with a few bucks a month. I super appreciate that if you choose to do it. I'll eventually introduce more special perks, but for now, it's just an invite to join the energy field of Collapse Astrology, and what you get in return is my undying gratitude. And this video should be out on Saturday, which means if you're watching right away, you're just in time to catch my first ever live stream. Starting this month, I'll be going live each Sunday with Collapse Times, your weekly skywatch from inside the unraveling. It will be a little astro news recap of the previous week, a little look ahead at the coming week, and some oracle or tarot card pulls for each week to help guide us through. Now, I'm pretty nervous about this, both about finding something to say each week and also about saying too much. I'm nervous about my Mercury in Aries getting out of control when I don't have a script in front of me. But this is something I've been feeling the nudge to do for years and years, and I think I'm finally ready to get serious about it. So I hope you'll join me, and especially in this first live stream, because I know it will help me a lot to feel the energy of folks on the other side and to be able to have some interaction with you through the chat. Once I get comfortable, maybe I'll start taking questions or offering personalized card pulls for folks. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, this Sunday, I'm going to go live at 5 p.m. Eastern. I'm not sure if that time will stay consistent. It'll definitely be Sunday evenings, maybe sometimes a little later than that, depending on the rest of my schedule. But I am going to talk about the Freedom Flotilla, the Trump and Musk feud, the march to Gaza from Egypt that's scheduled to start on the day of the Jupiter Saturn square on June 15th, and who knows what else. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching until the end. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on all these wild astrological transits and how it's going for you in your personal life. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I am super close to monetization. Every click helps. You can also find me on Instagram. You can sign up for my monthly newsletter so we can stay in touch away from the algorithm. And I am also available for private readings if you need some personalized support. You can find all those links below. See you next time.